Hey guys, it's Shon. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hey everybody, welcome to Not So Average with Shon Wilson. I am your host, Shon Wilson. Today is part 3 of our 3-part conversation series around life path and destiny. My special guest for today's episode is Odessa Moll, mystic intuitive healer. If you're already familiar with her content, you know that Odessa brings so much light and empowerment to all of her messages. She's done the same thing here. You are going to have so many aha moments. I know it because I did. Now, if you are just now joining us, you should check out my prior 2 conversations with Alyssa LaRose of Celtic Fairy Tarot and Jenny Florence of Moon Magic Weekly Tarot. Both of those are hosted here on the Shon Vibes channel, and I will put a link to them in the description of this episode. I want to thank everyone who has been part of this very special series with me. I feel so gifted. I mean, gifted is not even a strong enough word to describe how I feel that I've been able to sit down with these very, very wonderful healers. We're also lucky to have them. I also feel really lucky to be connected to you. Your likes and shares and comments have helped to get these messages out to more people than would have seen them had you guys not been so engaged with this series. So thank you for that. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do it right now because I have so many more fun things planned for you on top of my weekly tarot readings. Alrighty, let's jump into today's treat.
Hey Odessa, thank you for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, Shon.
Can I just say that this is such an honor for me? As you know, I'm a fan. For those of you who don't know, in addition to having my tarot channel, I watch a lot of tarot videos, and there are people that I love, and Odessa is one of them. You're such a light. You always seem to be in a place of, alignment. It's a word that I tend to use a lot because I do like it, but it feels like you are constantly in a state of alignment. Is that so? Am I reading that right?
You are so sweet. Well, alignment is something that is a state of mind. And I have to constantly on a daily basis remind myself of who I am and what I'm focused on doing in this world, what my purpose is, and what kind of life I want to lead. And I wasn't always in this state of mind. It took a really, really long time for me to get to a place of acceptance. And really that is at the core of me feeling in alignment on a daily basis, understanding that I can't control everything, accepting what's coming forward to me on a daily basis, asking myself, what could I be learning from this hard experience or this positive experience? And it just helps me to stay grounded. So it might feel from your perspective like it's easy, but I'm like the duck and I'm paddling underneath the surface of the water.
Yeah. That is a great way to put it. You know, there's something that you just mentioned that I really want to just jump in on. And I've talked about this some in the podcast. This is my 4th season of Not So Average. And each season has been slightly different, but the one motif that is like a through line is authentic self. And so you spoke about, making sure that, or being committed to being yourself. A lot of people never get to the place of knowing that this is an okay thing to do. How did that awakening happen for you? Like, how did you, or how or when, and if you can share, if you remember what age you were when you first had this sense of, I just need to be my real self. I just need to feel real. And was it from your childhood, or was this part of your adult maturation into adulthood?
It was definitely way later in life than most people would assume. I would say that I wasn't able to really 100% accept myself until I was in my 40s. Okay. It was a really long process.
Pause, time out.
Yeah.
In your 40s?
Yes. I'm turning 46.
Are you kidding me right now?
No.
I would never have guessed that. Odessa, I thought I was about to be this old fart on this on this interview with you. Wow.
No.
Yeah, we're in the same spot, you and I. We're in the same age range. So
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you get back to your answer. Sorry for being so rude, but the shine that is coming through you is what is making you feel so young. It's like you've got the gift of eternal youth is what it feels like. So in your 40s, that's when you started.
It's partially good genes. And it's also, I mean, that light that you're talking about, I think that people can cultivate that. You cultivate that also through the choices. It's all about your vibration. So if you are choosing to be happy on a daily basis, that will affect your inner glow, the way that your auric field vibrates, and people will pick up on that. Absolutely. So the coming to a place of self-acceptance really was a slow process. I had to go through a lot of hardships throughout the course of my life. And now it's come into perspective because of the work I do, helping people on a daily basis to understand the circumstances of their own lives. I had to have hard experiences so I could relate to the people that I was working with, so that I could read the cards and understand what it feels like to feel confused and unlovable, and like you are a black sheep and you don't fit in, and you have hardships that happen to you that you can't explain and that seem unjust, like people being hurtful towards you, lying, deceit, or losing loved ones, people passing over, horrible circumstances taking place in life that don't seem to make any sense, violence, all of those things. I had to be able to experience that in my own unique way over the course of my life, so that I had empathy for people when they brought that forward, which meant that it took a long time for me to get to a place where I could make peace with those things, because to be able to deal with the spectrum of highs and lows in life takes a long time.
The willingness to do it too, right? Because it's painful. It's painful to touch those parts of our experience, particularly if it was anything traumatic, because it's stored in the body. And so when we go through a process of healing, not only do we have the psychological pain of looking at that situation, but there's usually some physical pain that goes with it as well. There's a physiological response to the hurt that we've suffered, as well as the healing that we are trying to achieve by processing what it is. Yeah. So healer is in your tarot channel name. If I recall correctly, it's been a little bit since I've been on your website, because I have been there going, oh, I should get a reading from her. And so I saved you in my bookmarks so that I can, when I'm ready for my next personal reading, know to come to you, how to get to you quickly. Healer, I believe, appears on your website in several places as well. Did you find, so I say all of that to say, clearly you identify as a healer. And I've also noticed when I listen to your readings, you primarily do pick-a cards on YouTube. Whatever pile I pick, sometimes I will listen to mine and then the tape keeps running, the video keeps running, and then I'll hear some of the others. And invariably, in at least one of the piles in your videos, something comes up around helping people. Since that is how you identify, I am curious, did you feel a desire to help others before you started your process of self-authentication, or did it come out of having experienced your own healing, which then made you go, I would like to help others do the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have always been an empath, and I have always had psychic abilities. And as a result of that, I always wanted to give to others. There was various ways I applied that to my life. Typically, it was in romantic relationships. And because of, and, and also as women, we are also trained by society to play a particular role, to be nurturing caregivers who are self-sacrificing.
Right.
So as an empath and a psychic, where you're able to pick up on people's emotions, and then you have this desire to help, and then society is also supporting that. Do more of that is what society is telling us. I ended up actually self-sacrificing, and I was giving to others more than I was focusing on self, which actually delayed the work that I was meant to do with other people, because I was focusing all of my energy on one or two people in my life and not allowing myself to creatively express or explore different avenues that would open me up to a wider population. So it wasn't until I started to focus on self and put myself first and recognize that I'm important too, and the needs that I have are, you know, there for a reason, and I need to respect those, that I started to experiment with things that brought me joy and helped me to feel connected. And I started to open up doing tarot card readings for others. And it actually was something, the tarot channel was something, and my business as well, was something that organically happened, which, you know, I see now as divinely being guided. But I had read cards for myself for ages, and it wasn't until I started to just dip my toe into like online forums and say, hey, you know, I read cards. Do you want a free reading? That all of a sudden I was just guided down this pathway. You know, and the rest is history.
So speaking of pathway, and, you know, so much of what you said has already answered some of the question that we are here to talk about today, right? Life path and destiny, or the topic we're here to talk about. But for some people who haven't made that connection on their own, let's focus that a little bit more. Okay. So would you say, actually, before I was going to ask a question, but I have a different one first.
Okay.
How do you define life path or destiny or karma or calling, avocation, any of that? Tell me your thoughts around these terms and how people use them.
All right. So that is one of the things that I find most people really struggle with, because a lot of times when you listen to a tarot card reading or you listen to someone talk about spiritual concepts, they sometimes use those terms interchangeably, but they actually are quite different. So we all have elements of fate and destiny at play in our life. We all have a purpose, but we also have a life plan. So we are all infinite beings. We are energetic, and right now we are playing a role. This is one chapter in the history of your soul, and currently we are in the avatars that we are in now. We have particular names and we are connected to particular communities, but like I said, that's only one chapter. And there are all kinds of events that we are going to experience that are all predetermined. They are part of your life plan. So this is the storyline that you actually on a soul level wrote for yourself before you incarnated.
Pre-planned, but pre-planned by the self as opposed to possibly an outer entity.
Exactly. Okay. Now we all have guides and we all have ancestors, and there's various levels of support that we all come into this life with. Typically, people have 3 levels of support. You've got your primary guides, secondary guides, and your ancestors. And prior to you incarnating, they're also helping you to determine what this storyline will be. But ultimately, you are the number one person that's making that judgment call on what you want to actually have to face. But there will be a combination of good and bad things. From a human perspective, we see it as good or bad, positive or negative.
Right.
So the life plan will include destiny and fate. So destiny are the things that we are called to, that we want to experience, but it's based on choice. Okay. You have a number of different pathways that you can walk down, and it's all based on vibration. There will be like a very high vibrational path that will give you the exact outcome that is the most fulfilling. And then there is a slightly lower vibrational path that might be more challenging, but it's still valuable because we actually learn the most from the painful experiences. Yeah, we all know that to be truthful, but we don't necessarily like to accept that.
No, give me easy peasy any day. I won't complain.
Exactly.
I will not complain.
Fated events are the things that no matter what, you are going to have to face.
Okay.
They are important because they're pivotal points in your life, but the reason that they can't change is because those are those interconnected points where your soul is touching another person's storyline. So it has to unfold a particular way, because if you change your mind and you go in a different direction, you could derail someone else's life plan.
Interesting. Can you give us an example? Because this is news to me. I have not heard this before. There's something else you said that was also new to me, and it was the idea of 3 levels of guides, which I find very, very fascinating. But getting back to this idea of the fated events in the life, and that they're fated because of the fact, it's almost like, do you remember Back to the Future?
Of course. Absolutely.
Remember how it was so important that Marty not disturb the timeline? It sounds like it's similar to that. Can you give us if you can think of more than one, great, but if you can only come up with one, totally understandable, a real life example that people might be able to relate to about what a fated event might look like?
Yeah. Oftentimes the fated events that we can easily see as part of this timeline are tragedies. So there are things like the death of a loved one that might set your life on a particular path, and it will be painful and hard to accept, but ultimately it might take you down a pathway that leads you to your purpose. So I can give you a personal example.
Please.
My father, when I was 25, was diagnosed with terminal cancer and passed away.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Luckily, because I'm psychic, I am still connected to my father. So even though he had to cross over and I don't get to physically see him, on an energetic level, I am still
have your relationship.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
which is really, really beautiful. But ultimately, his passing ended up leading me to the point that I'm at now, because it helped me to really, really see my psychic gifts, because I could maintain that connection with him. Whereas prior to that, I had doubt, like, what if this isn't real? What if I'm reading into things? But having someone that I was so close to be on the other side, giving me guidance, it really helped me to open up to that. And it also helped me to take risks. I realized life is short. You have to make the most of it. You have to pursue the things that you're passionate about now.
Absolutely.
And so I moved, I took risks, I took, classes and met people and traveled, and I did a whole bunch of things that I probably would have been too fearful to do if he had still been in the physical.
Interesting. And also you probably would have felt, as most of us do, an obligation to stay near to him if he were still here, instead of knowing that you had the freedom to go and explore different places and different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Another example is all of the health and safety guidelines that we have, or the effects of certain laws. A lot of times we have to have certain regulations put into law because there are people that end up being harmed by medications, or they have, physical health concerns that corporations will move ahead with things that don't benefit the larger community because of profit. And we have to learn from that we need to actually set up guidelines and restrictions on what they can do. So the fact that someone might be harmed by a medication or a procedure is the cost that soul plays, a sacrifice that they play, so that later on people won't have to face that.
Well, and on the flip side of that, I would guess the person who initiates the change or passes it through, or is the scientist who discovers the thing that needs to be made to help, so that we don't have more losses around that health issue, or that I'm not really great with science, so I'm going to stop there. But but that for them, that's also fate. That's also part of the fate. Interesting. And it's so amazing to hear you say that, because I, as most people probably do, never think to tie spiritual journey to medicine or to science. So that's a great example that you just gave, a great practical example. I am really good at tying it to money and business, but not. And it might be my block against science. I don't know what it is with me and science. Like, the only science that I ever did well at in school was chemistry. And it's because of the math. I'm good with math. But in general, you said what now? Like, you can say a scientific term and it's already gone. But I love both of these examples that you just gave us, because one is, as you pointed out before you started speaking, very personal, and it's about the individual. And the other one is much broader, and it's about society. And to think, do you guys tend to think about that? Because I never think about fate as having anything to do with, I never think of an individual's fate as having anything to do with society at large. But that's a great example. That's a really great example.
And those souls that ultimately potentially had irreversible consequences to the medical damage, or there was some sort of like loss of stability in their life, they actually get a lot of positive karma. So on an individual basis, being embodied in that situation, they might ask, why me? This is terrible. I don't understand why I have to go through this. But on a soul level, they decided that they wanted to participate in this because in one event, they can clear out so much negative karma that they might have accumulated in the past. It's a self-sacrificing, martyred experience.
Yes.
And ultimately that brings about a lot of balance, because karma, a lot of people assume, is like a punishment, but it isn't. Karma is neutral. It is a balancing of energy. So you can accumulate positive karma and negative karma. It's just high vibrations versus low vibrations. And we all accumulate a lot of negative karma from the beginning of our journey, because typically younger souls, is how it's often referred to, they can be more self-serving. They can be more narcissistic. They make bad decisions that benefit them and hurt others, which is causing negative karma. And then later on, as they mature on a soul level, they will make these sacrifices and be a martyred person so that they can make amends for some of those selfish decisions that they made at the beginning of their journey.
So you kind of answered a question that I was about to ask next. And it's around the idea of, life path or purpose, or even destiny. Some people shy away from these concepts because it seems to be there is a lot of teaching out there about how it has to be, quote, for the good of others. And I personally believe that it is possible to not be someone who is called to or even effective at helping others, yet also not necessarily be selfish, that there is something that's in between. If to use myself as an example, I taught for a very long time, which is why I sound like I sound like a professor most of the time, right? and I didn't go to school for teaching. I've always been good at communication. My mom is a good talker. My father, when he was living, was a good talker, speaker. And, but they didn't formally speak. They're just really good with words, which is why I say talker. And so I think a lot of it for me is hereditary. Okay. And then I got my degree in musical theater performance and was lucky enough to get a job right away at a professional theater in my hometown. And part of the job, or an adjacent job that they also allowed me to have, was teaching in their enrichment programs. So I didn't go to school for teaching, and I've never taught in a school system, but communicating ideas to others has been a part of my professional life since I was 20 years old. And I say all of that to say, sometimes, because I'm one of those people, I like to think of myself as a shapeshifter, and this is probably what made me so good at acting for such a long time. Whatever I'm around most, I not just become attracted to it, but I kind of morph into it. And so because I consume a lot of educational content and I consume a lot of psychological content or psychology content, I then, of course, that's what's how I'm then communicating. I say all of that to say, despite having some strengths in that area, I don't necessarily feel called to teach, which is why I'm not a teacher anymore. One of the things that I found that was missing was, and this is going to out me out. I mean, this is going to out me as a little bit more selfish than I would like to seem, but I don't feel that I had enough of a concern for the students to get it and own it as a teacher should. I felt that for me, it was more along the lines of I was teaching skills that I had. So it was a way to make money in the skills that I had. And when it comes to healing and helping others, and you kind of touched on this too, it started for me also in my romantic relationships and wanting to help grow the person. And that, of course, was selfishly motivated because a big part of it was, I want you to be better so we can be happy. And that always works. That's full. Yeah. Anyway. So, but with a lot of growth and doing a lot of inner work and a lot of healing that, for unprocessed, I had a lot of unprocessed stuff, and there's possibly still more. What I started discovering was my desire to entertain is its own way of giving. That's not education. That's not healing. So and some people might think, oh, well, entertainers are all selfish. No, we're not all that. Most of us are, yes, but not all. So all of that, to give a little bit of context around the idea of, because for some of us, I wonder if some people might miss what it is they may be effective at for fear of thinking it would mean having to sacrifice for the sake of others. That is a turnoff to a lot of people. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that our concept of being someone who gives to others is sort of shaped by religion. And I think that there are a lot of different ways that you can be a support to the larger community that don't necessarily mean that you have to sacrifice of yourself. There are lots of ways that we can bring joy and alignment to the world, because that's ultimately what we're all aiming to get to. We're all here so that we can finally get to a place where we can be authentic, where we can express ourselves freely without the judgments or the pressure of society to conform. And so we can see the interconnectedness between all of us. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a formal teacher to be able to pass on the knowledge that you have. In your case, teaching is what you're doing right now. You are performing, and you are being authentic. And you're also sharing your experience, and you're helping to facilitate your audience to meet someone else that might be able to help them make their own experience. So that is being a teacher. There's lots of different ways that you can teach. And ultimately, all of us, through every experience we have, are in a teaching setting. You're either being a teacher with every interaction, or you are being a student. All of the soul connections that we have, I'm sure that everyone's heard of soulmates before. every significant person that you have in your life, every person that comes into your life, whether they are a love partner, a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, they're all soulmates. And every single one of those encounters is, like I said, an opportunity for you to either help somebody to see what they need to improve on, or they're going to help you see that.
Very interesting.
You're constantly teaching people things.
You know, I there's so much of what you just said that aligns for me, and that it really just makes a lot of sense, right? So, you know, first of all, I do want to point out to anybody who's watching from the tarot community, whether you came because you know Odessa's readings or you know my readings, listen to what she just said about, or take note of what she just said about how all these different people that we know are soulmates. And the reason why I feel the need to point that out, Odessa, is because a lot of times, and this might be, I might have to have you back again so we can talk specifically about people's fixation on soulmates. And like, it's like this one person out there that you have to try to find. And if you don't, then you don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
So in terms of deep connections, what she just said is important for realizing we can have deep connections with the people who are already around us. This is important. But the other thing that you spoke on about how we're always either in teacher or student mode. And so for me personally, I in fact, I just said this to my significant other the other day. Justin is his name. I was like, I wish I could get paid to learn. I wish I could make my living just learning, because I personally, despite my ability to teach, I prefer to, and it's because I don't want to be in charge. That's what it comes down to. I don't want to be in charge of other people. But I love learning. I love learning. And like when I interpret Hierophant card, for instance, most people are always focused on the teacher aspect of it. It means you're a teacher. It means you're going to be teaching. And I'm always like, wait, this card also has 2 acolytes in it. There are people who are learning at the same time. And so a lot of times when I'm doing readings, I'm noticing where it might be talking about a learning for the client or querent, as opposed to that they have to become teacher. So for those people who might identify like I do as not necessarily feeling like you want to, let me say it better. There's this idea of life path or destiny or purpose needing to be high level. But it's possible, I think probable, that for most of us it's not, because we can't all be, not for lack of worthiness or ability, but life is just made up of levels. And so I have a pet peeve around acting. And it's, I don't love the fact that just anybody who decides they want to, a lot of times will just go, I'm an actor today. This is one of the reasons why my field is so, why it's hard for people who have an ability sometimes to get traction, because it's clogged with so many people who might not necessarily need to really be there. It's a very low barrier to entry, as we call it in business, right? And so I will often say, and Justin gives me a hard time for this, the only person on the planet that gives me a hard time for this, I will often say, I can't just walk into a hospital and say I'm a doctor today, you know? And it's because I take what I do and my ability to do it very seriously. And not just me, but anybody who's got whatever gifting that you have. And if you have a natural gifting, and then on top of that, you take the time to train in it and have years of work experience in it, you deserve to function in it. And other people who want to come along and be a part of it, I think that they should also get some training, you know? Or if they have a natural tendency and don't need training, at least get some discipline. Do at least that. Just be disciplined about it. So all of that to say, when it comes to the acting, I always made this correlation. He thought it was a ridiculous one. But part of why I also felt that way is because, Odessa, I know how important entertainers are. And I don't feel like the world really gets it. I think if the world got it, fewer people would be forced to entertain for free or be playing their guitar on the street corner and stuff like that. And here's why I think it's so important what entertainers do. Imagine being that trauma surgeon, right? And we saw this during COVID in particular. Trauma surgeon, divorce lawyer, child advocate, any of these high-level, emotionally and psychologically draining jobs. You have to have a break from that. You need a respite, and you need something to help you unplug and unwind. And that is what entertainers give to society. And I don't think that that's understood enough, how important that piece of it is. For anybody who studied classical theater or the origins of performance, they would get it, because those societies knew, and that's why the arts were patronized the way they were by governments and by rich people. But now it's just kind of like, especially in American society, thought of as like it's a hobby that some people got lucky to make money at, right?
Well,
so, yeah.
So I was going to say it's being an entertainer, but being a creative in general.
Yes.
The art of creation requires that we are able to have the time and space to be able to get into a flow. Right. And that is sort of contrary to the needs of capitalism, where you have to perform at a particular pace so that ultimately there will be something to sell, because it's all about the accumulation of wealth.
Yeah.
So it's art. The reason that the arts aren't valued is the time and energy that is required to facilitate that process. And it doesn't really blend well with capitalism. So in a way, we have to start redefining how we create that sort of abundance for ourselves. Like, what does that look like?
Right.
Because it hasn't always, like you said, been done the same way we do it now.
Right. Right.
And the creative energy is also connected back to the divine feminine, because the woman is the portal that everything is created from.
Yes.
And there is still this imbalance between divine feminine and divine masculine energy. And it has nothing to do with gender. We all have divine feminine and divine masculine energy within us. But if we are in a society that values masculine energy, productivity, drive, focus, all of those things over the surrendering, nurturing, empathy, creative energy of the divine feminine, you will always have careers that are linked with that feminine energy that are not valued.
Because we see it with teaching. Nurses tend to do okay, but we see it, a lot of the careers or callings that are associated with females or feminine energy, feminine activities, they are underpaid compared to those which are not. And, so tying this all together with pandemic, that's the one place where I feel that more people, they may not have consciously made the connection, but we saw it so obviously illustrated. We had this horrible thing happening to the world, and everybody leaned on streaming. And if there hadn't been entertainers, if there hadn't been creators to create the things that entertainers did, then what? Like, what would that have looked like? So this was not just an opportunity for Shon to talk about acting. It was really about something that I think is super important. And it's letting yourself know there are many ways, I think, for purpose to show itself, and that it doesn't always have to be high level or sacrifice or a drudgery. I think a lot of people shy away from exploring it at all because of the feeling that it's not fun, that it's not fun. Do you find that so with your healing, do you consider that to be a life path or a purpose? Like, how do you define what you do?
Well, first, I want to address what you were saying about purpose, because I think that there can be some misconceptions about what a life purpose is as well.
Okay.
So life purpose, most people will associate that with their vocation, their job. That's how they define it. But once again, that is societal influence, because your purpose is the energy that you bring to this life. It's so much more than just your job. It's how you literally affect everything that you're doing while you're here. And it's something that you step into as you start to accept yourself and you shift your own energy. So once you accept yourself and you're like, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm passionate about, this is the influence that I want to have on my community, and this is the kind of world I want to live in, then you step into your purpose and you create that.
I love that.
It's so much more than just your career. Of course, it touches that area, but some people, their primary focus in life is raising children. Some people, the primary focus of their life is their hobbies and talents, the creative adventures that they have. Some people, it is a particular cause. Maybe they have a full-time job that helps them to pay the bills, but on the weekends, they are working for a nonprofit.
Right.
And that's their true purpose.
And what you just said about raising children, in some cases, and I talked about this, I think it was the first episode of the season where I talked about like that neighborhood home that is open and welcoming to all of the children, right? Because the raising of children, they may be your own and others. Like my sister is one of those homes. I have two sisters, and the baby always knew she wanted to have kids, and she's the only one of the three of us that's got any. And in addition to raising her own children, she provides a space where the other kids can all come and they just know that they're welcome there. And for some kids, and I mentioned this in that episode, for some kids, they don't have that in their own home, the sense of being. And so her purpose particularly, and I'm not trying to define for my sister what her purpose is. She doesn't watch this anyway. Y'all know my sister does not watch my Dang It podcast. Can you believe that? Well, she's got twins and they're 6. So maybe she's got a reason. But anyway, but if I were to just glean from that, it's possible that her purpose is, with her always knowing she wanted to have children, never babysat a day in her life before becoming the mother of children. It's possible that it's to be that person to provide that space for children. You know, she also is often thinking of businesses. So to your point about how it doesn't have to be connected to a job, sometimes we're lucky enough to see what our energetic, our soul purpose is, and be able to tie it to a way of earning. But as Odessa pointed out, that's not always the case. But sometimes I think people think they have to be separate, and they don't even let themselves entertain the notion of, how do I marry these two parts of my life?
Yeah. And they need to listen to their intuition. So, going back to what you were asking me about my healing and it being part of my purpose, my healing is multi-layered. I am healing through energetic healing because I do Reiki. And then I am healing through spiritual coaching because I will meet with clients on Zoom, very much like what we're doing, and talk to them about what's going on in their life. And then I'm healing also through my card readings, working with tarot, because everyone requires healing in a different way. Some people need sort of physical, hands-on healing. Other people need mental clarity. Other people need emotional or energetic healing. So I apply my healing to all areas of my life and my business. And that's my purpose, to be a healer. But that doesn't mean that it's only related back to the, business and working with clients. I'm applying these same techniques to every interaction that I have in life.
And even I would guess, because this is the case for me, your alone time. So it took me a while to get here, but I figured out that my life purpose is to enjoy life. So many people forget to freaking enjoy it. It's a drudgery. It's getting through it. It's trying to get to heaven, or it's, trying to make sure you reincarnate, whatever your belief system is, But for so many people, it gets missed that it is possible to enjoy life here. And when I had that revelation for myself, it became first about on a solo level. And as I do that for myself, that makes it easier for me to help others remember to enjoy their lives. Like my boyfriend, I think I'm too old to say boyfriend. I probably should say significant other. He is, he's very work oriented, and not just like the work that he does, but when he's got free time, he's always finding some task, something to fix or do around the house. And, you know, this whole idea of eternal youth, which I think you have, and the spirit of eternal youth, and I dare say I think I have it as well. There's this fun is part of that. Enjoyment of life is part of that. And so I bring that to him. And then once I started noticing that, then I was like, oh, this can also permeate even more the other things that I do, the work that I do. So it's like that spirit. The purpose is the energy. Some people would say spirit, some people would say energy that you bring to the different activities or endeavors that you have.
Yeah. And he likely is bringing to your life that stability and structure. So you balance each other out. Absolutely. And that's likely why you decided to have this soul contract, this soulmate connection, where you come together in this way, because he has something that you're missing. Absolutely. And that you're learning to expand on, your growth. The two of you are likely connected so that you can bring that balance to each other's lives, that you decided to have this soul contract, this soulmate connection in this life, because he is teaching you how to have that structure and balance. That's likely an area of your soul's evolution that you're working on in this life. And you are going to help him to really live in the moment and to find joy in the everyday things. You probably can have a good time literally doing anything. And he maybe needs more like organization and structure, and you're helping him to shed that. So if you start to look at every interaction that you have, every experience that you have in this life as either an opportunity to learn or to teach, it really helps you to take a step back and get perspective on things, to not like personalize everything.
That's such a good point. It's a good point.
It really helps. At least it helped me when I was working through, you know, my own self-limiting beliefs. Right. We all have them.
Yeah. No, so you make a great point. So, you know, for me personally, I think it was a movie line that I heard. And someone said in this movie, the purpose of life is life. And it was one of those catastrophe movies. It wasn't Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, but it's a similar kind of situation. Because if we think back to, and which most of us don't do, but if we think back to before we were as developed a society as we are now, before we had civilization, that literally was the purpose of life, is just to freaking survive, right? And my brain translated that to the purpose of life is to enjoy life. And a lot of it is because I was operating outside of that, which is my nature, in being so structured, because someone had put on me shame around enjoying myself so much. And I adopted what was said to me and became a different person. For over a decade, I pretended, because I'm a good actor, I pretended to be something that it was functional, because life is cause and effect. But it wasn't functional internally. And so the joy just went away, you know? So it is really great. I love what you said about how every interaction, every opportunity is a chance to either teach or to learn. And in some cases, like these, what you call the soul connections, we're probably doing a little of both, right? Like we're each doing some of each.
Yeah.
Now, for someone who is unsure how to begin to even consider figuring out their path or their life purpose or their destiny, whatever lands on them as what they want to pursue, what suggestions would you give for how they can start to explore that?
First, I would say to give yourself time. Don't feel like you have to have it all figured out right in the beginning. Even if you're not aware that your guides are communicating with you and guiding you, they are there and everything is supported and taken care of. We are under this false assumption that to be here And to be a success at life, we have to be abundant, successful, and happy at all times.
Right.
But that's an illusion. We are living in a universe of duality. There are good things and bad things.
Right.
The purpose of life is many things. One of them is to enjoy all of the physical pleasures. You're in a physical body for a reason.
Right.
So enjoy the sensual pleasures of life, having beautiful clothes, having love affairs, eating great food, spending time with friends. Express yourself physically in as many ways as you can. That's part of being in a physical body and part of the purpose of life. Another aspect of our purpose of life is to learn lessons and grow. That's why you reincarnate, because it takes multiple lifetimes, literally thousands of lifetimes, to learn every single lesson that you possibly could. Thousands and thousands of
Girl,
lives.
I'm tired. I don't have time.
I know. Well, the beauty is that it's not perpetual. So you don't automatically have to go right back into the next life. There is a break in between. You will stop, you will reflect. Often it's referred to as a soul review, where you will basically go and look at every aspect of your life, and you will analyze with your team of guides, where did things go right? Where can you improve? And all of this is studying yourself so that you can plan for the next life.
Yeah.
And you can take as much of a break as you want. Now, you also have to consider that right now, any of the, discomfort that you have, the tiredness, the fatigue is connected to what it feels like to be a human. But once you shed this body, you're not going to have that kind of fatigue any longer. You're not going to have that weight on you, because as an infinite being on a soul level, you understand why everything happened. You are in the dark right now. So part of that fatigue comes from us trying to figure things out at all times.
Yes.
We have to get to a place where we can just accept what's happening, and that we trust that the universe has our back and is guiding us in the right direction. Now, it helps if you are interested in the spiritual, the people that are watching this, hopefully, and listening to this, hopefully some of the insights that we've brought forward in our conversation will help them have a little more clarity so that they can surrender to just being alive. Yeah. But part of the point of having all of these lives is to give you ample opportunity to make mistakes. So don't think that you have to get it right all the time. No, make mistakes.
A big thing that you say about the hyperfixation on getting things right. I've spoken many times about the fact that the need to get things right, or the fear of getting things wrong, keeps us from trying. And sometimes I would say, to discover that which we're meant to do, we have to explore and experiment and see what feels like a fit.
Yeah, exactly. Make the mistakes. Have no regret about that. Accept that it was a learning experience. And based on that experience, you'll make a different choice in the future. And ultimately, that's what you're supposed to be doing anyways. You're supposed to be learning what doesn't work for you, learning what you truly value, learn what's authentic to you by making the wrong choices. And every time you recognize that, you are stepping into your authentic self.
Wonderful.
So you can't make the wrong choice, because even if it's wrong, you're just going to redirect down the right path, and you're going to get so many more opportunities in the future. This is just one chapter in the story of your soul. One chapter. And I think the book can be as long as you want it to be.
I think it's so important what you just said, because again, I feel that not enough people understand you can unmake a choice. So I feel that when you said it just now, you actually possibly meant on the grander scheme, that if you make your actual wording was, you can't make a wrong choice because you'll redirect in the future. And my guess is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you mean in the grander scheme, but it's also true for in this lifetime that you can unmake a choice.
Yes. Yeah, we have to recognize that sometimes we have to make a choice that will benefit us. A lot of times people get stuck and they don't want to redirect because of the consequences of that choice. Women have a really hard time making a choice for the self because we're taught to be selfless. So they will stay in relationships where they don't feel valued. They will stay in jobs that are dead end and they're never going to get promoted because they have this sense of duty. You don't owe anyone anything. And making a choice that's ultimately going to benefit you and make you happier or open you up to an opportunity that will bring in a community of people that will support you or bring you more money will, in the long run, benefit all of the other people in your life that you're trying to protect by making a choice that hurts you.
Absolutely. Plus you're serving as an example to others, right? So that's the other part that I toyed with for a while in terms of my purpose, as I was trying to get a sense of that. And I'm still learning to not necessarily have to tie it to earning, but the inspiration that you are for other people when you choose to do that, which is, well, ultimately, it is self-serving. It is in alignment for you. It is the right way for you instead of, and it gives other people permission who may not have thought, you're like a model, like a role model.
Yeah, but that's not self-serving, right? We have to be able to take a step back. And yes, in this moment, you choosing to be an artist, to be a creative might feel like it's only benefiting you. But of course that isn't true, because you being happier, one, energetically will affect every single person that you're around.
Absolutely.
It also serves as an opportunity for you to role model what it looks like to be authentic and take the road less traveled. And you have no idea what projects you might be involved in that could dramatically affect other people's lives, possibly opening things up for them to live their purpose. The directors, the editors, the stage hands, like everyone else that's involved in your industry, it creates opportunity for them. And the storyline in itself could be an inspiration for people. You are having this domino effect that you don't necessarily see because it goes out, it ripples out so far. So you just have to accept that everything is going to have an effect on everything else around you.
So that ties back into what you said about fate also.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's affecting not only everything that's happening in this moment, but it's also affecting everything that's going to be happening in the future. And we're constantly also manifesting. So you've got your fate. Those are those events that I mentioned that you cannot avoid because they are the big things. And it could be positive things as well. It could be that you are fated to have a particular love affair that is going to end with a child being born, and that you are fated to be that child's mother or father. It can be all kinds of things. Then you've got your destiny, as I mentioned before. Those are the things that you're getting to choose. They are the pathways in between those destined events. So which pathway do you want to walk down? I like to visualize it like a spider web. So all of the little strands that link in between the primary pathways are those destined events. Some pathways are going to be easier to navigate around, and some pathways will be harder. You get to pick which one you want to go down. I always recommend that if you're a spiritually minded person and you believe in your spirit guides, ask them for help. Ask them for guidance, because they will find a way to communicate to you what you need to do, either through your intuition or through synchronicity, repeating digits on a clock, having a synchronistic message come through a tarot card reading online, seeing a particular image over and over and over again. But you have to be able to suspend disbelief and have faith that what you're experiencing in that moment is true guidance for you.
That
And
comes down to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that comes down to being willing to accept the blessing. And a lot of us have a hard time accepting it. And that has to do with self-worth issues, right?
And also accepting that your truth is enough truth to take action. That you don't need other people to agree with you.
You can self-refer. Girl, I'm going to have you back. Like, because listen, so one of the reasons why for this series, everybody, I've invited 3 tarot readers specifically who I'm a huge fan of each of these 3 ladies. And I invited them to come and talk with us about life path and destiny, because oftentimes on YouTube, you'll see that tarot readers will do life path / destiny readings, or they'll do you get what I'm saying? I keep slashing this thing because I don't know what to call it yet. But anyway, and so that's why I invited you and Alyssa LaRose from Celtic Fairy Tarot and Jenny Florence from Moon Magic Tarot. But I had no idea when I sat down with you today and when I invited you in the first place that you would be such a font of information around the soul and the spirit in relation to this topic. There's so much that you've already said that I hadn't anticipated. And I feel like there's still so much more in there. So I am going to have to try to figure out a way to have you come back and teach us more. Teach me more.
I would love to. Absolutely.
Amazing. For those people who, Odessa, I tend to speak a lot around self-worth and how, I try to define for people the difference between self-worth and self-esteem, because they are not the same thing. And most of us, a lot of people have low self-worth without realizing it. So for people who do identify or know that there's something that's been blocking them, low self-worth oftentimes keeps us from making any choice or making a choice that would, feel good. Or even knowing that we are able to worthy of receiving the guidance. Do you, the idea of asking their spirit guides or asking if they believe in the Judeo-Christian concept of God or anything that's, spiritual in nature, they hear you today. And because you live in this space, you speak on it with ease, which can make it feel like it's very easy. But for someone who has not been connected in that way yet, do you have any suggestion or tool of how they can, if they're willing to and want to, open up to beginning to have a relationship with spiritual help for them?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I really encourage people to embrace the concept of spirituality on an individual basis. There are certain concepts around spirituality that cross cultural, religious lines, and there is a core of truth that goes through all beliefs.
Yes.
So whatever you believe, however you decide to express that, all of it is perfect. All of it is good. Lean into what feels authentic to you. If you don't understand spiritual concepts and the idea of spirit guides or the concept of God doesn't resonate for you, then look into theoretical physics. Look into that area, because that is exactly the same thing as what we are talking about here. So it's just different terminology, but it is the same core beliefs. They are believing in an energy that makes up everything and that there is different dimensional space, which is exactly what we've been talking about, that there are different aspects of our identity, that there are the possibilities of life that never ends. So, step into an area that makes sense for you, that you can relate to, and then see where that leads you, because everyone is at a different point on the same path. And in this life, maybe you're not destined to be spiritual or religious. Maybe in this life, you're destined to be part of the scientific community, and you're going to relate to your idea of identity through that lens. And there are people that express these concepts through the scientific lens that are masters of being alive. They're masters of what it is to transcend the physical, even though they're science-based. So lean into what makes sense to you, and don't feel like you have to force yourself to fit into one particular community.
That is a beautiful answer. And you just blew my mind with theoretical physics. I was not prepared for you. Girl, you are so much. You are all the things. I swear, I was a fan when I came in. I'm a bigger fan now. Odessa, thank you so very much for giving me some of your time today and sharing just the light that is you and the wisdom that you have and your very simple way of communicating things so that it's easily digestible for people. Thank you for sharing that with my audience and your audience today. I hope some of your people watch this as well.
Oh, me too.
Anybody who's not already familiar with you wants to become a fan too, wants to get a reading from you. You do distance Reiki as well as wants a Reiki session, wants a reading, personal reading, or just wants to follow some of your social media. Can you tell us how to get in touch with you? How do they do that?
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, odessamoll.com, and all of my services are listed there. If you want to book a session with me, I do, as Shon was saying, I do Reiki. It's all distance. I also do past life readings. I do spiritual coaching. I do Akashic Records readings and spirit guide sessions. And I also do tarot card readings. And then I've got all of my social platforms. So you can go to my YouTube channel. You'll find me under Odessa Moll, Mystic Intuitive Healer. And I also have my TikTok, which is also under the same name. And I do regular pick-a cards as well as little mini readings that you can find on TikTok and YouTube as well. So there's lots and lots and lots of content for you guys to absorb. And I talk about everything that we've been talking about today.
I love this. I love this. And you guys, of course, you know, I will be linking all of her socials as well as the website in the description box of this platform, wherever you're watching and or listening. Again, Odessa, thank you very much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. This was such a joy, and I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely.
Aren't my theme songs fun? I found them at Purple Planet Music. You can find music for your projects there too. Just go to purple-planet.com.